Alrighty, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Bubble. The Daily Bubble, that's not what this is. This is the Aquarium's online academy. However, if you want to watch the Daily Bubble, it's the show the Pacific Pals do, which we were just working on a moment ago. So if you want to watch that, check it out as well. But this is the online academy. Sorry about that. My name is Luke. I'm here from the Aquarium's education department, and we're going to be talking this morning about sharks and rays and about their conservation. So, if you have any questions during this program, we're going to bring up a number that you can text questions to. It should be popping up here in just a moment. The number is 562 286 1838. Again, that's 562 286 1838. If you have any questions during the show and you want to get them answered, I'm here to answer questions. And also, we have monitoring that text stream is the director of the Aquarium's education department, Dave Bader. So we're going to be, well, we're very knowledgeable. We know a lot of stuff. And furthermore, we're excellent researchers. So we're going to be finding things out as we go. And I imagine I'll probably learn a few things in the process of answering these questions as well. So it should be really exciting and fun. And remember, if you are texting in any questions, make sure you have your parents' permission if you are of an age where you need to ask. And if you want to let us know your name and where you're calling from or the school you're with or anything, if you have a class that you're in, we'll be happy to give you a shout out on the air as well. And finally, if you are not watching this live, but instead are watching it after the fact, you can also email questions to us at live@lbaop.org. Again, that's live@lbaop.org. And that email is something we monitor throughout the day. So if you have any questions, you can, or longer things that you're curious about, you can send those questions in and talk to us. So let's talk about sharks. To begin with, let's talk a little bit about what is a shark anyway, because there's actually a decent amount of confusion about this. So let's have a look at some sharks here. See if we can see any common characteristics that they've got. So this is one of our sharks here at the aquarium. This is a sand tiger shark. When you look at him, he's he's kind of a pretty I guess you'd say kind of a stereotypical shark, for lack of a better word. He's kind of what you expect to see when you think of a shark. He's got those fins sticking out, kind of a grayish-brown color. Got sharp teeth, although you can't see them really well in this picture. But let's look at a few other sharks that might be very different. Let's say, for example, this shark. Now, this is a shark that you probably recognize if you visited the aquarium. It's the zebra shark, also known as the leopard shark, where it comes from in Australia. Though we have another shark we call the leopard shark here in California, so we call him the zebra shark. But this shark is very different, right, from that last one we looked at. Much less kind of like the thing you'd expect to see when you see a shark. Much more kind of a nice little rounded face there. These fins are actually more rounded too. The one in the back is really interesting. This long, tall fin. And then another thing I love about zebra sharks, they have these really cool ridges along their bodies, and of course that wonderful pattern on their skin. It's stripes when they're babies, but as they grow into adulthood, actually pretty early in their lives, those stripes start to separate into spots. And this is where that whole confusion over whether they're a zebra shark or a leopard shark comes from. When they're adult, they look like a leopard. When they're a baby, they look kind of like a zebra. But the zebra shark is an example of a shark that kind of breaks out of the mold of what you might expect a shark to look like. And here's one that's maybe in between. This is our local leopard shark, the California variety. We have these right off our coast. If you go snorkeling in places like, say, Catalina Island or along rocky areas of the coastline, you'll occasionally see these. Also, they get a lot of them down in San Diego. This shark's only about 5 or 6 feet long at its biggest and is a bottom-feeding animal. So really totally harmless. And this is actually the one shark in the aquarium that is actually hand-fed directly by scuba divers. Though, as we can see, if we go look at our Shark Lagoon exhibit, we do have divers swim with our sharks quite a lot here at the aquarium. In fact, we were just looking right before the program started. You might have seen it as we came on the air, on the web here. And there are divers in there now, or at least there were a minute ago. We'll see if we can get that webcam up there in a second. But what is it, when we get down to it, that makes a shark a shark? Oh, here we go. Oh, this is a great angle. See, well, okay, so clearly not a shark here. If you're wondering what that big tube is, by the way, that's called a hydrovac. And this is basically an underwater vacuum. It's the way we clean, like, detritus, basically debris and leftover food and stuff out of the sand at the bottom of our exhibits. And it works in a way where it picks up all the goop and stuff. The sand is a little too heavy, though, so the sand just sort of comes up and then falls back down. It pulls out all that organic material. You can actually kind of see that happening. Get a fun view of how we clean. And as you can see, our divers here are completely happy hanging out in the shark exhibit. They're having a fine time, maintaining social distancing even in the water, as you can see. And anyway, so let's return to that question. What is it that makes a shark a shark? Well, first off, contrary to what you might expect, sharks are a fish. They are actually fish because when you're talking about fish, the only things that are required to qualify as a fish are the possession of gills throughout your life, has to be through your whole life, and then also of a spinal column. And except for a couple of weird amphibians, every single animal in the world that has those qualifies as a fish. So sharks are fish, just like a goldfish, just like a bass or anything else, but they are from a different family of fish, just like their close cousins, the rays. Sharks and rays form a branch of a whole separate area, a whole separate part of the fish family called the elasmobranchs. And elasmobranchs are special because they are a type of cartilaginous fish. So most fish, the kinds that we usually eat if you're into eating sustainable seafood, will have bones, right? And those kind of thin, bones that kind of shaped like a toothpick. And if you are cleaning fish or eating or preparing fish and you don't do it right, you might end up getting some bones in your food. Every time my parents made fish when I was a kid, this would always happen. I'd be like, oh, this is pretty good. And then I'd be like, oh, God, this needle-sharp bone in my mouth. So most fish that we normally are talking about when we say the word fish are that. They're bony fish. Sharks and rays, though, don't have any bones at all. Their entire skeleton is made up of cartilage. And sharks and rays are so ancient that they actually came to exist on this planet before bones were even invented. Sharks and rays have been around for about 400 or 450 million years. And back when they first developed in the oceans, there were no animals with bones at all. So they're really, really extraordinary creatures. And they have adapted to survive in basically every kind of ocean environment. We have stingrays like our bat rays here that live along kind of coastal shallow areas or bottom feeders. You have big open water sharks and rays, things like the manta ray and the great white shark and so on. And you have deep water sharks, things like the sleeper shark and the Greenland shark and so on, and the goblin shark. And so they've really expanded over the course of their history to cover the entire ocean. They occur in basically every ocean habitat, at least everyone I can think of. So they really are extraordinary animals and really, really worth learning about and helping to protect. And you can learn a lot about sharks, just like you can about any animal, just by observing them. So if we take, for example, let's get another shark up here if we can. Let's see, I'll step out for a second. What other sharks can we get in view here? So this is a great white shark. So when you look at the great white shark, this is a really famous shark, right? When you look at it, what kind of things do you think it might eat? If you imagine this, if you just saw this animal right off the bat, and to give it some scale, by the way, actually this is pretty good scale. If I step a little farther back and make myself smaller, that's probably close to the size of this shark compared to me. It might be even a little bit bigger. The largest great white sharks get to be over 20 feet long. There have been a couple specimens that have gotten as high as 22 or 23 feet. And so when you look at the shark, what do you think it does with its time? Because one of the things we can look at, first off, to kind of figure this out, is its teeth. Great white sharks are probably the most famous sharks, so their teeth are pretty famous too. If you look at the teeth of a great white shark, you see these triangular serrated shapes. They kind of look like steak knives. Great white sharks basically are going to use those teeth to take bites of large animals. In order to consume their food, great white sharks usually have to break it up into a few pieces because things like sea lions and things like whales even are a little bit too large to eat in one bite, even for a great white shark. So they have to kind of saw through it through repeatedly chomping of their teeth. And when you see teeth like that on a shark, it usually tells you that's a shark that's eating large animals and it's taking bites out of its food. And we've actually started to get some questions about sharks here. Alexa asked, how many teeth do sharks have? Alexa, that's a very good question. Talking about shark teeth, let's go have a look on my little side camera over here. I'll show you some examples of shark teeth, and maybe we can count, or I don't know. We'll see. Let's see here. Let me turn this thing on. Did I forget to turn this thing on? I think I did. Here we go. Just give us a moment to get booted up here. There we are. So this is a shark jaw. This is actually a model of a baby great white shark's mouth. I'm going to turn down the camera's light here just a little bit so we can hopefully see it a little better. There we go. So you can see, as I was mentioning, those kind of sharp teeth. These ones are, it looks like somebody dropped this, so these are a little bit broken. But normally they're triangular, and they have these serrated edges. And Alexa, if we look in the back of this, you'll notice that there's lots of extra teeth. So if we zoom in here in the back, you see all those in the back there? Those teeth are folded back because your average shark goes through thousands of teeth in its lifetime. This is one of the reasons why sharks' teeth have to be so particularly shaped depending on what the shark likes to eat, because sharks' teeth fall out pretty easy. Unlike your teeth, unlike my teeth, they don't have this strong root that kind of holds them in place into a bone. Instead, in sharks' teeth, they're just sort of rooted by a little bit of tissue onto the cartilage there, and they fall off pretty regularly, and new ones are always rolling in. So it's no big deal for a shark if they lose a tooth or two because they can grow new ones. The thing is, though, that they can only grow them so fast. So this means that if they want to make sure that their teeth are healthy and they have enough teeth to eat, they can't go biting into all sorts of random stuff because they'll lose too many teeth and then they won't have teeth for a while. So the great white shark's teeth allow it to consume things that it can take bites out of, big animals like seals and sea lions. But if you look at other kinds of shark's teeth, a lot of sharks wouldn't be able to eat that stuff at all, even if they wanted to, because they don't have the right kind of teeth to kind of get into it. I have another couple cool questions that are coming in here. Milo asked, how sharp are a shark's teeth? They are very sharp, Milo. It depends on the type of shark. Some sharks have more rounded teeth. Some sharks have extremely pointy teeth. Some sharks have teeth that have more of a sharp edge, kind of like a knife. But I can tell you this, when we use our shark jaws here at the aquarium, and some sharks, like the basking shark here behind me, don't really have any teeth at all, or at least their teeth are not used for anything anymore, because the basking shark eats plankton using its gills. But I can tell you, in terms of how sharp shark teeth are, I have actually cut myself before, accidentally, just handling the shark jaws we have here at the aquarium. So that's not even on a real shark. I've actually cut myself before just touching shark teeth. So they're very sharp in the species that have those sharp teeth. And if we want to see one other example, yeah, we can go look at our camera over here on the side again. I can show you a different shape of shark teeth. This is another replica of shark teeth, so not quite as sharp as the real ones, luckily for me. These are the teeth of a mako shark. Now notice there's a little bit of a difference here in the shape compared to what we saw on the great white shark. Instead of having those, oh, I got too bright there. Okay, let's see here. There we go. Instead of having those really sharp triangular teeth, the mako shark has more needle-like teeth. So the edge, it looks a little sharp in camera, but I can actually run my finger up and down it, and it's not going to cut me. It's relatively smooth. But at the point is very pointy, kind of like a needle. Now, when you see teeth like this on a shark, oftentimes, and a great example of a shark here at the aquarium that has teeth like that is the sand tiger shark. When you see these kinds of teeth on a shark, it makes you go, wow, that shark must eat big stuff. It's got big, scary-looking teeth. But actually, when sharks have those kind of more needle-like teeth, those teeth are really just used to bite into a piece of into a prey animal in order to kill it or immobilize it or injure it enough that they can then just swallow it. So even a shark like Big Guy here, even though he's got some pretty impressive teeth, we'll probably have some other angles on him we can maybe get a look at eventually. Even though Big Guy's got these big teeth and he's like 10 feet long and seems like a big ferocious thing that might go after larger animals, actually that species of shark, just like the mako shark, can really only eat small stuff. I got another really good question. Lauren asked, how many species of sharks do we have at the aquarium? Currently, Lauren, we got about 13. And I could probably rattle them all off if I really tried, but I hope, well, now I have to. The sand tiger shark, the zebra shark, the leopard shark, black tip reef shark, white tip reef shark, let's see, white spotted bamboo shark, brown banded bamboo shark, epaulette shark. I'm missing a couple. Ooh, the bonnet head shark. What else we got? Leopard shark, spell shark, horn shark. There we go. And the smooth hound shark. That's our 13 sharks. Boom. So, but if you're wondering how many sharks are there actually in the world overall, or how many species of sharks are there, there's way, 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 way more. There's about 450 species of sharks in the ocean. And depending on where you look, that number will change a little bit because there's always debate in science, you know, when we talk about species of animals, about, say, are all the great whites in the world the same species of shark, or are they actually different species? Are there subspecies, or should we split those up into more species? So there's debates like that, and plus, we can know for sure that although we've discovered sharks in every part of the ocean that we've looked, and that we know there's about 450 different kinds, there's probably still some that we haven't discovered yet. Every year or so, you'll hear on the news that a new shark species is discovered. Sometimes it's very similar to a shark that already exists. But nonetheless, we are still continuing to find new species of sharks. Now, I got one other good question about the swimming with sharks earlier. Why do caretakers swim with sharks? Well, we swim with our sharks here at the aquarium mostly because we have to clean their exhibit. In the case of the sand tiger sharks, the sand tiger sharks and all the sharks at Shark Lagoon, they're actually fed from out of the water using target poles. However, although we can feed them from out of the water, we cannot clean their exhibit from out of the water. So whenever we want to go in and do cleaning, we actually have to have divers go in and do it. And as you can see, they're still working on it right now. You can see that long tube. That's from that hydrovac, the underwater vacuum I was talking about. You can see somebody scrub it over there as well. And whenever the divers do this, they always do it in pairs. Every time we dive anywhere at the aquarium, there's never just one diver that goes in. There's always at least two to make sure that they can keep each other safe. And mostly just to keep each other safe in terms of if anything should go wrong with their equipment or anything like that. Now, I got some other great questions coming in. Aiden asked, do orcas eat great white sharks? And that is a really good question. Is that from, you said from Kirk of the Valley? Is that a school? Was that a school? Well, Aiden, if you're from a school called Kirk of the Valley, hello to you and your school. And Aiden, that's a good question. Do orcas eat great white sharks? Maybe baby. Actually, wait a second. I'm right. I know. I even correct myself. I almost forgot. But everyone here was like, no. Yes, they do. So, what orcas do, because they're such intelligent group predators, orcas are able to take down just about anything. In fact, they'll even go after adult blue whales. Great white sharks, when they encounter orcas, certain orcas that are able to do this, will find themselves usually bested by the much more intelligent orca. And what orcas like to do is they like to eat the shark's liver. So oftentimes they'll kind of flip them over. And one of the great things about flipping a shark over, if you're an orca trying to eat one, is that sharks, when flipped over, go to a state of temporary paralysis called catatonic immobility. So when you flip a shark over onto its back, if you're able to keep it there for a second, it basically becomes temporarily paralyzed. And when orcas achieve this, they can then go and basically bite into the shark's belly and eat all of its soft insides. So, well, we've already got into just eating internal organs and stuff. I was trying to keep the shark episode much more bright and happy. But yeah, orcas do actually prey upon great white sharks. But great white sharks do, I guess, get their revenge in some senses. The basic facts about great white sharks and, say, cetaceans in general is they aren't the best of friends. Great white sharks consume dolphins. They consume small whales sometimes, like babies. They also sometimes will prey on dead whales. And in return, orcas, which are after all just the largest dolphin, and some other dolphin species, will prey upon sharks. So it's not that one exclusively is the predator and one's exclusively the prey. It really depends on the situation, the kind of shark or the kind of whale you're talking about. And but generally, yeah, they don't get along too well. They see each other as potential predators and potential food sources. Now, Sophie, also, from Hilo, Hawaii, where do you find shark teeth? That's an excellent question, Sophie. So shark teeth, if you're wondering where you find them in terms of, can I have some for home, you can purchase replicas of shark teeth on the internet. That's what we use here at the aquarium. But also, sharks have been in the ocean for a really, really long time. Like I said, about 450 million years. And during all that time, they have been dropping teeth at the rate of several thousand per shark per lifetime. And as they do that, those teeth oftentimes fossilize. So they get preserved kind of as rock, and then we can discover them later. So you can find shark teeth oftentimes on land. There's people here in California who will actually go hunting for them in certain places in the desert because they're there from ancient sharks that died millions of years ago. And I don't know if there's any good places to look for fossilized shark teeth in Hawaii or not. With all the volcanic activity and the more recent geology, it might be a little tougher. But I don't know. You should look up some of your local geological opportunities. Maybe you can find shark teeth there too. And there's also a chance that you might find them just basically on any random time at a beach. You can occasionally come across one. Though it's a little bit hard to find on beaches that are crowded. Though I guess some of the beaches are crowded right now. So we got a whole bunch of other good questions come in. Ooh, this is a question from Camilla. How long can Greenland sharks live? So this is getting into some of those really rare sharks that we don't talk about that much. The Greenland shark, I don't know if we'll be able to get a picture of it up because I don't know if we have any, but the Greenland shark, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is a very weird deep sea shark that lives in the cold waters, at the very least of the North Atlantic, but I think they actually spread around a lot of other places because when you get really deep in the ocean, it doesn't really matter where you are in the world because the deep, deep, deep ocean is about the same temperature pretty much every place. It's close to freezing. Now, the Greenland shark is famous for a few different reasons. For one thing, it's a deep water shark. For another thing, it happens to have these parasites that like to eat its eyeballs. So oftentimes, as Greenland sharks get older, they'll just have these two long worm-looking things sticking out of their eyes instead of actually having eyes. But since they live in the dark, it doesn't matter. But Camilla brought up this question: how long can Greenland sharks live? The reason that's such an interesting question is because we just a few years ago discovered that Greenland sharks can live a very, very long time. Greenland sharks, we believe, can live at least a couple of hundred years. We know this because we found Greenland sharks that had tissues that were able to be dated to being at least a couple hundred years old. And it's likely that many Greenland sharks live a lot longer than that. In fact, on the extreme end of things, Greenland sharks could potentially, if they stay healthy, live as long as 500, 600, or 700 years. Maybe even longer than that, because after all, the ones that we measured aren't necessarily the oldest ones ever to live. So Greenland sharks live a really, really long time, and that works for them because they live in such a stable, cold environment that doesn't really change very much. Another crazy thing about Greenland sharks is they take a long time just to grow up. Greenland sharks aren't able to reproduce, we think, until they're over 100 years old. So, wow, huh? Imagine yourself living 100 years, just taking 100 years just to grow up, and meanwhile you've got these wormy things eating your eyeballs. Being a Greenland shark doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me, but it works for them. So we've got a whole bunch of new questions in. I'm going to start answering some of these more because we are getting so many good ones. So why do sharks become immobilized when flipped over? Melody had this question. That is a really good question, Melody, that I don't even know if I can answer off the top of my head. There's actually a number of animals this happens to. There's even some birds that become immobilized in this way when they're flipped over. Chickens are a famous example. But if you haven't heard me mention this already, this is called catatonic immobility. Basically, when a shark is flipped onto its back, it becomes sort of temporarily paralyzed. And the best explanation I can give you off the top of my head is that it probably basically confuses various sensory systems in their body, and because they're always so upright, and may interfere with their sense of balance and other things, and basically cause them to go into this sort of temporary, sort of confused, I don't want to say panic, but confused state. Sharks, when flipped over onto their backs, will eventually usually recover from it on their own. But I also tell you, sometimes they do it to themselves accidentally. We have a zebra shark here at the aquarium that, on one or two occasions I've seen, accidentally put itself into catatonic immobility just by basically foraging too much, and it accidentally flipped itself onto its back, and then it just sinks on down. You're like, oh no, what happened to that shark? But then it sinks to the bottom, kind of takes a moment, realizes what's going on, and then flips itself back over and continues on its way. So that's a really good question, but I don't know the full kind of deep explanation of why that is. Some other good questions. Do mommy sharks give food to baby sharks? Well, it depends on what you mean by give food. So there are a lot of sharks that lay eggs, such as the zebra shark, for example, and that baby inside that egg does have a yolk to feed on to allow it to grow. However, sharks, and this is true of all sharks, so far as I think anybody knows, do not spend any time with their babies after they're born. Once this egg is laid that this little baby shark is inside of, well, the egg that'll be back any second. Once that egg's laid, the baby shark just comes out of it, swims away, and is off on its way. Once the egg's laid, the mom shark swims away, and she doesn't ever come back. And the baby shark takes a few months to hatch, and once they do hatch, they just swim away too, and they probably never meet their parent. And the sharks that give a live birth, once the babies are born, they pretty much just go their separate ways from the mom, and that's it. Sharks aren't known for their long-term parenting skills. So again, mommy sharks do in some sense give food to their babies because they provide a yolk, or whether it's in an egg sac or in an internal egg sac for the sharks to give live birth. But no, they don't do anything after birth, though. After the baby's born, that's pretty much it. A whole bunch of other questions. Which sharks have the sharpest teeth? That is a good question. I would say the sharpest teeth that I'm aware of in the shark world probably belong to things like the mako shark. The goblin shark has really sharp teeth as well. The sand tiger shark does. I don't know if there's been ever any real careful measurement made of exactly which one is the sharpest of the sharpest of the sharp. But as far as having those needle-like points on the tips, those sharks have really sharp teeth. And then great white sharks have a real nice cutting edge, just like tiger sharks do too. Now, Xavier had a question for us. How much do sharks eat each day? So it depends on the shark. A shark like Big Guy here, who weighs, something like 200 pounds probably, maybe even a little more, eats about 1 to 2 pounds of food a day. Basically, an easy way to think of this is that sharks eat about 1% of their body weight daily. And at the aquarium, we give them that amount every day so that they always have a regular meal and they stay nice and comfortable. In the natural habitat, they might go longer without food, so they might have a really big meal. So let's say the shark goes 10 days without food. Well, maybe it has 10% of its body weight in one day, and then it doesn't eat for a while. But, and especially if it's like deep sea shark, they probably have a lot of situations like that because food is kind of rare in the deep sea, so animals tend to eat really big meals and then kind of slowly digest it. But generally, sharks need about 1% of their body weight every day to eat, which isn't that much. Humans, we consume like 7 or 8% of our body weight every day in food, if you count all the water and stuff. Actually, it's 7. No, it's more like 4 or 5. Sorry, 4 or 5. Because we're warm-blooded animals and we burn through a lot of calories. Your brain alone takes like 300 or 400 calories a day just to do its work. So you can imagine how much more you need to eat. A shark's brain doesn't need that many calories. So other questions we've got. Let's see. Xavier had another one. Xavier from Cornbloom Elementary. Hello to Cornbloom Elementary. How do sharks get fins on their backs? Well, simply put, they grow them. Interesting thing about shark fins, though, if you look at our sand tiger shark or any other shark, you'll notice that they can't flex their fins quite so well as a bony fish can. Bony fish, whether you're talking about a goldfish you got at home or a tuna or a sand bass or a sheephead like this, they're what we call ray-finned fishes, and these fins are able to be flattened against their bodies, basically kind of folded up. Sharks can't do that. When sharks move their fins, it's only basically like little turns and stuff to adjust. The only fin on a shark that really moves a lot is the one at the end, the tail fin. Whereas on bony fish, they can do all sorts of stuff with their fins that allow them to sometimes even propel themselves. So with sharks, to push themselves to the water, they always have to wave that tail back and forth. A lot of bony fish, though, can actually flap their fins as well to help with propulsion. Let's see. Izzy's asking, what is my favorite shark? Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I think the Greenland shark might be my favorite shark just because it's so weird. There's also a really, really weird shark called the frilled shark that I think is pretty cool. But I'm only naming sharks we can't find pictures of course. But for those of you at home, and I know you're all at home, for those of you at home, if you ask your parents, I'm sure they can look up the Greenland shark or the frilled shark on Google. You can probably find some good videos about them on YouTube as well. Just ask for your parents' help, and you can check out all these sharks in your own time, since we're not able to find pictures of necessarily all of them here. And finally, we had is that all my questions I have right now? Oh, that is all the questions I have right now. Well, if anybody has any last questions, we've got a couple minutes left. But other thing we want to talk about before we wrap up, people spend a lot of time thinking about sharks and oftentimes portraying them in ways that aren't very sympathetic, and that's kind of a shame because sharks need our sympathy. Sharks have been around, like I said, for a really long time, like 450 million years. And in that time, they've come to exist in all the parts of the ocean, and even more importantly, they've come to be important to those parts of the ocean. Because a place like a coral reef, for example, has a healthy shark population, that means it'll also have healthier populations of animals lower down in the food chain. Remember, when you look at these places like, any kind of complex habitat like a coral reef or a kelp forest or anything else, those habitats only work because of thousands of different kinds of connections and relationships among the animals. There's predators, there's prey animals, there's animals that produce resources, there's animals that maybe consume those resources and turn them into different kinds of things. There's animals that provide a habitat, like the coral reef itself. All these different, and there's animals that consume waste. All these different things are going on in ecosystems, right? And what happens when you take away the big predators at the top of the food chain in any kind of habitat is that whole balance gets thrown off. What happens with sharks is basically some of the animals that they might be consuming can get overpopulated. Let's say some of those animals maybe are animals that consume some of the other resources in the habitat. So if those animals get overpopulated, maybe the coral reef starts to suffer. Once the coral reef suffers, maybe the animals that need to hide and live in it and feed on it start to not be able to survive. And then so their populations start to drop. And this process can happen in any kind of habitat, whether it's on land or in the ocean. When you take away big predators, the habitat itself really starts to kind of fall apart. Predators are really we call them keystone species. They're sort of the thing on which all the rest of the habitat balances. Now, also, this is especially important to us today because sharks are in need of our help these days. I know most of us probably don't eat sharks, but some of us might have. I have to, in full disclosure, once when I was in Iceland, I was served a dish called rotten shark. I'm sorry, it's true, I ate it. I was 12 years old, but such is life. And if you want to know what rotten shark is, go ahead and look it up on the internet. You'll be delighted to discover. Anyway, so but there are also lots of other ways in which sharks are consumed too. Sometimes in ways in which we don't even realize. And if you want to help protect sharks, you can start to learn more about that and sharks really do need our help. We're losing millions of sharks every year in the ocean because of them being hunted and fished unsustainably, and also because of them being caught in nets intended for other animals, because of depletion of some of their food. So if you want to help sharks, you can learn more about sustainable seafood and make sure that your seafood choices are sustainable, and just spread the word that sharks are important, sharks are good, and we want to do everything we can to protect them for the future. Now, I think I have one or two more questions. Sarah from New York. Wow, long way off. Are great white sharks too big for aquariums? That is another really great question. When you're deciding whether or not sharks should be in an aquarium, there's a couple different things you have to consider. Size is one thing, but even more importantly is the shark's behavior. So if you take a relatively large shark that does well in the aquariums, like our sand tiger shark, big guy, he's like 10 feet long, and so you'd think like, well, that's a big animal. Can he live in an aquarium? The answer is yes, because sand tiger sharks basically spend their lives working as kind of slow-moving ambush predators. They don't travel enormous distances so far as we know. And for this reason, the sand tiger shark's kind of instinctive behavior is I just sort of go around, slowly through the reef, try not to make a lot of noise so the other animals don't see me coming, and then, or hear me coming, and then I just lunge out and grab them. And so a sand tiger shark's pretty happy to just kind of go in slow circles, and that's just what it does with its time. So an aquarium isn't such an issue for them. They can do pretty well in a kind of a small space. Great white sharks, on the other hand, migrate thousands of miles over the course of a year. Great white sharks are some of the most mobile creatures in the ocean. They travel all over the place. The shark, just to give you an example, the sharks that we have here in California are the same population of sharks that live in part of Australia. Our sharks actually go back and forth. So, or usually they kind of live here when they're younger and they go there when they're older. At least that's what we understand now. So great white sharks, even when they're young, tend to get pretty frustrated inside of aquariums. There are some aquariums that have tried to keep great white sharks. The Monterey Bay Aquarium has experimented with it a little bit. But what they found is that after the shark starts to get to the 6 or 7 foot range, they get a real strong desire to want to go travel elsewhere. So the Monterey Bay Aquarium has had to release their sharks after a certain time. They've also done experiments with keeping them in like enclosures out in the ocean, but this is mostly for research purposes to learn more about them. So some sharks are happy in aquariums, other sharks aren't meant to be in aquariums, and we're okay with that. And this means if you want to see a great white shark, you got to go out in the ocean. They're pretty hard to find, but it can be done. We are out of time, my friends, so I hope everyone's enjoyed our show today. If you have more shark questions, remember you can email us at live@lbaop.org. Again, that's live@lbaop.org. And we will be happy to answer any more questions you might have about sharks. And, of course, you can join us again today. We have 3 more classes today, including the next one, which starts at 11 o'clock in about 25 minutes. And what is that next one about? Oh, it's a drawing class. We're going to learn to draw and focus on drawing ocean stuff. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time here at the Aquarium's Online Academy. Bye-bye, folks.